Hello and welcome to Upload's Virtual Studio. I'm Ian Hamilton here, and I'm joined by
Daniel Beauchamp, also known as Pushmatrix on the Twitters.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of videos here that I'm going to be able to throw up onto our virtual TV here. We're going to go through some of your experimentation. Before we get to that, tell me how you got started with VR development and what you do for work.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I got started when I tried the DK1 many years ago. And at first I was like, yeah, you know what, this is cool, but like the Half-Life demo and all that kind of made me a little sick and queasy. It was only until the DK2 came where I was just like, yes, I have like full positional tracking and everything. And at the time, and I still am working at Shopify, a commerce company. The first time I tried the DK2, I was like, holy crap, this is going to change everything with shopping. Like in the future, when we're all wearing, whether it's AR or VR headsets, a spatial headset, the way that we shop together or alone will be completely different than how we do it today. So formed a team, this is back 2015, around commerce and VR and experimenting. A lot of it was just experimentation to see how do these technologies meet. Like, how would you shop in VR? It's probably not going to be a mall. It's my biggest pet peeve. And people think of shopping in VR. It's just like, oh, I'm walking around like a shopping mall. It's like, no, like you're in VR. You can be anything you want, be anywhere, go anywhere you want, do anything you want. Like, and you want to go to a mall. I always joke that wizards don't shop at shopping malls. So it was an internal team all about experimentation of how do you check out in VR? How do you look at items in VR? How do you add to a cart in VR? What is a cart in VR? Is it the physical manifestation of a shopping cart? Is it something more magical? And everything in between. So it was a ton of experimentation there around VR. Then it was in around 2018 or so that AR really came into the mix with stuff like AR Kit and AR Core and really these powerful APIs on everyone's phones. Our team switched focus to be more on AR shopping for the time being. And that made me sad. I mean, I was happy because that's the way to go right now for shopping and spatial computing. But VR is so near and dear to my heart that I needed an outlet to still be working on VR. And that's kind of how a lot of these experiments came to be. It's none of what you'll see today is related to my work. I do this on my spare time. I do it for fun. But it's my outlet where if I'm doing AR all the time at work, at home, I'm playing around with hand tracking and weird VR stuff.
Hmm. And let's get to one of the first videos we've got here. So we've got the first one on my list here of the videos you've shared with us is a Fingersaber AR prototype. So tell us, describe what we're seeing here for the audio listeners at home who aren't able to tune into this, and how did you produce this?
So what you're seeing here is essentially Beat Saber, but played on your fingers. So you can imagine the little lightsabers that you'd have in Beat Saber, but they're protruding from your index fingers. And what's really important about what you're seeing here, so the setting is on the seat of an airplane. You are on a plane and you are playing this game with the little tray table down. And it was really intentional to have that setting because the concept here is, well, when we're wearing a spatial headset and we're finally able to fly again, could we enable little mini games like this? How would games fit on a small tray table? And what I loved about it was after releasing this video, someone actually went and created a game jam called the Tray Table Jam, specifically around, well, what games can we design on this small little surface? And a cool side effect of it was you then also produced games that were more accessible, where with Beat Saber, you have to imagine you're standing up, you're waving your arms around, but if you have limited mobility, maybe you can only move your hands around in very small motions. Well, these a game like Beat Saber in front of you could be a way to make that game more accessible. So that was just like this really fun exploration around tray table games.
And can you show Fingersaber Expert Mode, because that's sort of a related project, and I love that this is one of the underlying things with these prototypes overall. This is the expert mode where it's insane. But like the fact that this is so relatable, everyone, I mean, most people out there have hands, And so I find myself watching your videos and sort of like motioning to myself exactly what you're showing on the screen. And we've got the cheese grater fingers, which makes so many people scream out there because it's so relatable. But like, when did you realize these things were going to be so viral and relatable?
Um, so what I loved about hand tracking when I first discovered it, when Oculus Quest came out with it, I guess late 2019, was all the focus was just on the hands. I could produce a video. Like, I think the first video that I made that went sort of viral was this like skateboarding one, where like a tech deck finger skateboarding. And I said, "Hey, this is such a great example for hand tracking." But all I needed to do in that scene was just put a little skateboard, a miniaturized one, on my fingers, and I didn't have to create an elaborate environment or elaborate interactions or whatnot. That's all it was. And people just got it. They were just like, "Oh yeah, like I'd love to tech deck in VR." With other experiments, like even this cheese grater one, all I need is one prop. It's like the hands and then maybe one additional thing, like the cheese grater. And I don't need an elaborate background. Like you can see, it's just like a plain cube. There's a gray sky. What you're seeing here is me cheese gratering my fingers off with the Oculus
Oh,
hands. But that's all I need to do. But it's so relatable. Like you said, most people have hands, they see it, they go, "Oh my goodness," there's a visceral reaction to it. That even if you don't care about VR at all, you're reacting to this video, you're sharing this video. It speaks to you in a nightmarish way. But before
I
hand tracking, if you wanted to show something off in VR, here's the skateboarding one. So, okay, there's a bit of an environment here. But before hand tracking, to show off VR, you kind of needed to have a room, an environment, a more complex interaction for someone to understand, oh, what is it that you're showing off? Hands, I could just put hands in front of a black backdrop, and that becomes all I need. And all I have to do is some quirky interaction with the hands. People get it, people enjoy it. So that's kind of, yeah, how I just fell into this hole of hand
Y-
work.
Yeah, VR Chica, this is the cheese peeling developer. This is his earlier cheese grater fingers that he did. And then he also, yes, did cheese grater. We'll get to that through my list here of uh, all the prototypes. So let's show up a accordion VR rhythm game. I love this one as like connected to the Fingersaber prototypes because it's like this cheesiest way of imagining Beat Saber to be done, but it actually looks like it would work. Like, I would
so
actually want to play this.
So I guess this kind of contradicts what I was just saying before of simple environments and simple stuff. So what you're seeing here is it's Beat Saber, except you're holding an accordion instead. Or actually, some people got mad when I called it an accordion. It's technically a concertina, is the real word. But yeah, just this idea that you are pushing and pulling this instrument in order to hit the beats, kind of poking fun at rhythm games, and also being like, hey, this could be a fun interaction with your hands.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the next one here. I'm going back and forth between the chat and my notes here to find out what's next. Yeah, let's get hand fingers. Let's do this one. This was one of the first nightmares that I really recall you doing, and I think I wrote it up when you
Mhm.
actually showed it. Why?
Why not? um, so here's a great example of like the focal point just being the hands. What you just saw, hands, and on each finger is a miniature version of your hand mimicking that same motion. It looks terrifying. To implement that was really, really simple. But once again, people just got it. Even if they didn't care about VR, they just thought, oh God, like what? You have these hands with hands on it? That's creepy. I want to try that. Or they go, I never want to see that again. Um, you ask why? Honestly, my Twitter feed is driven by why not. Like I just go like, huh, like I have hand
Yeah.
tracking now. Like in the same way that I say shopping in VR should not just be a mall, using your hands in VR should not necessarily be like using your actual hands. What if you had big hands, small hands, backwards hands, floppy hands? I did release an app on SideQuest called Handspace that just kind of played around with my thought process of, yeah, what if your hands were 5 times bigger or 5 times smaller or
Mm.
upside down? How does that change your relationship with your hands? Um, where you go, oh my goodness, they're backwards now. But after a few minutes, you just get used to it. And it's just like this weird, like how your brain thinks about your hands.
The gripping hands on the end of your fingertips is just, I mean, the thing that gets me about this is like, yeah, these are, everyone replying to your viral tweets are like, nope, nope, on a lot of these nightmare ones. But like, you as a VR developer have to spend significant amount of time putting the headset on and off to troubleshoot these things. And like, have you dreamt of your hands because you've spent so much time in there?
Not really. Like a lot of people, maybe I'm just like, I don't know what that says about me, but like even like the cheese grater thing or like the peeling off like the hangnail cheese one, like they're like, oh my god, like do you get like a phantom pain sensation? And like I don't. So like I don't know what that says about how I like interpret my hands, but trying a lot of these things doesn't necessarily feel like I'm actually peeling off skin from my hands or like whatnot. So like yeah, I wouldn't say I like dream about weird things like that. But I mean, I definitely sometimes wake up at like 2 in the morning and go like, oh shit, what if I could cheese grate my hands in VR? That
And
happens. It definitely
I love
happens.
the philosophy, the philosophy of thinking, because it is what VR is good for, and our commenters are mentioning it too. Just the why not attitude with VR is how a lot of the creativity out there. We've got so many bizarre, amazing things, and it only kind of comes from this place of why not experimentation.
Well, so one of my pet peeves with VR devs, or I'll say devs as a whole, is when they get their hands on a new technology. A lot of people go, "I need to build a product or a game in order to use this tech." And as soon as you get into that mentality, it's like just such an enormous task. Like, oh, you're going to build a whole game around a hand mechanic? Well, that's going to take you years. Do you have the motivation to do it? Do you have, yeah, yeah, like the enthusiasm is going to die down after a few weeks. So it's like to give yourself this task of I have to find some MVP product or game or whatnot. You'll end up just not even doing the project in the end. So with my stuff, I go, okay, it doesn't matter if it's silly. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have a real world application yet, because in doing this silly thing, I might discover a little nugget in there that I go, oh, this could eventually be extracted out into a game or something. But I don't limit myself to say, until I have the most perfect idea, like I won't do any experimentation. It's like, no, just throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And I time box most of my stuff to like a week. If it takes more than a week to develop it, I normally don't do the idea. Myself, I get distracted a lot. I think a lot of devs get like shiny object syndrome, where they go like, "Oh yeah, you're like, cool, this is the coolest idea ever," and then 2 weeks later, you're like, "But here's a cooler idea," and you just keep hopping and hopping and hopping. And people sometimes feel guilty about that. I managed to change it around to look at it as no, like that's good. Like I should time box it to a small amount of time. So I give all my energy to it, and then I go, cool, that's done. It's a little gift. People liked it. Off to some other crazy idea versus committing to, a 2 year long, I'm going to build a game all around hand cheese grating.
Hmm. Let's get into some of these next ones. The chainsaw prototypes. We'll show those two videos back to back. We've got the chainsaw wood prototype where you're chainsawing pieces off of a wood block with your hands holding a chainsaw. And then there's another one where you had an ice sculpture. And then you also did the haircut scissors prototype
Mhm.
as well, which we've got it later here in this list, but you've also got a pottery demo. What are you starting to get at with some of these? It seems like you're honing in on an idea with some of these prototypes of how you can actually be creative with your hands. And what have you learned from that?
Right. So the video that you're seeing is like a chainsaw art simulator, where here you're carving ice before you're carving wood. It actually wasn't using hand tracking; it was just using regular controllers because I wanted that haptic feedback when you were sawing
Mm.
into a piece of wood. That was actually the only project that like I kind of violated my rule of keep it take a week or two. The chainsaw one was months, not like months of like constant work, but it was like this project that I always had on the side that I just chip away at. Yeah. chip away. I just chip away at this project because it was a pretty monumentous task. Like, in order to carve this wood, it's not like a sculpting tool like medium. Like here, you actually, if you take the saw and you cut right through the wood, that piece is going to fall off, and not just stay floating in the air like a lot of sculpting apps would have. So it was a lot of research into, all the academic papers on how to do that and how to do the cutting. And what you say, is there a theme? I became sort of interested in cutting in VR, like the idea of like, yeah, as early as even the cheese grater, it's like, yeah, if you have this thing and I can start like slicing parts of it off. Um, if you could use scissors in VR, like the hair cutting one, use scissors. I don't have a video of it, but I played around a lot with like just cutting out cardboard, like having the haptics of cutting out like a little cardboard shape, and I just became kind of obsessed with like this like, yeah, craft, arts and crafts almost in VR.
Mm.
That the chainsaw one was kind of related, where I was just like, oh yeah, like what if you could just chainsaw it and in VR? And some people watching this, or some people commented being like, well, why don't you just go do it in real life? I was like, okay, well, first of all, it's a pandemic, and like I don't know where I can go just get a chainsaw and like
Yeah.
wood to do this safely. But yeah, it's just like, even though this is something you could do in real life and it's not like the most fantastical thing, it's just like, yeah, well, I don't have access to this stuff, so I've always wanted to try chainsaw carving, so why don't I build a silly simulator?
One of these questions here from Andrew King, I really appreciate. He says you say your pet peeve is that devs always look for a larger project. Is your pet peeve that devs are not sharing their experiments, or that devs are not experimenting at all?
uh it's more that they're not experimenting, and like they're almost afraid of like wacky ideas. Like I've just seen
Mm.
it a lot where people go like, oh, like this seems like a cool thing, but like, oh, it's a bit silly. I don't know if anyone would play it. And as soon as you go like, well, I don't know if anyone would play it, it's just like, well, okay, like maybe not. Like a lot of my things, like people wouldn't actually want to play it as like a full game. But if you're trying to learn, I think the best way to learn, at least for myself, has been doing these small little things. In fact, behind every single one of these videos, the main motivation is to learn something new about Unity. For the cheese grater hands, it was, can I take an animated mesh, which is my hands, and slice it at runtime? I don't know. So I'm going to go off and learn it. But in order to learn it, I'm not just going to read about it and say, okay, I'm going to give myself a little task. Well, let's put this little simulation. Or yeah, here with
No, we
what
did
you're
it.
seeing is
Oh, we did it.
peeling, as if your hands were string cheese, and peeling off little pieces of it. I wanted to learn more about rigging in Blender in order to do the peeling effect and all that. So I give
Mm.
myself a little scope to say, I want to learn about X. Here's the smallest thing I can do that is fun to learn about it. And I don't worry about, is this going to be like a huge successful game, because
Mm.
it's just like a small task to learn about that thing.
And for our commenters out there, so our last stream, I did sort of tease that we were going to be showing these fingers, and I'm going to describe. Do I have your permission to do at least describe the gross version of the cheese fingers?
Sure.
Okay, so he wasn't he didn't share with me the video of he didn't give me permission to share the video of the gross version of the cheese finger. So I will just describe it for those of you at home with the backdrop of the cheese string fingers. All right, so the cheese string fingers that he shows in this video, you're peeling off the pieces, and the gross version has actual red like bone and blood underneath the finger, and it is just so much more visceral, and all you're doing is like adding a color in there. It is just, oh my god, yeah, people in the comments are freaking out. But the reason I decided to do this is on our last stream, all the commenters said, show us the gross one, show us the gross one, we want to see we're ready for it.
Well, because originally that one was Hangnail Simulator, and I did have hands in my skin tone, peeling back, and you didn't see like blood gushing or anything like that. I don't like that type of gore. But I just decided, well, I'm just gonna do like a basic kind of pinkish interior to my hand when I peel it away. But when I saw the video, I was just like, whoa, okay. And I shared it with a few of my friends, and they're just like, oh, I don't know. And so I feel like that could, like, already people on Twitter were saying that they reported my video. So I was just like, I didn't want to post it with Hangnail Simulator. So I'm like, okay, what if I just color it kind of like cheese string, just call it like a string cheese simulator? So I went with that.
And John Wade says he's seen it and he had to take the day off work. Yeah, that's, I can
Hello,
imagine.
John Wade. John is a colleague at Shopify. Hello. Glad to see
All
you're
right.
taking time off work to watch this.
All right, so let's get to the next one. Chia, we've got the Chia Head Scissors prototype, and we've also got the Haircut Scissors prototype. Probably should have put those together in the list. And then we've also got Inspector Gadget, where you've got the gadgets at the end of your fingers. And I love the Inspector Gadget one, and I've been thinking about this. So Oculus reserves the pinch gestures of your first finger and your thumb together on either hand. So you can pinch with one hand your first two fingers together to get like the menu. And then you've got, you do that with the other hand and you get to the main menu of the app. So you can access like the menu inside the app and then a menu for the whole system by doing those gestures. But did you find any sort of common gestures that you think would be more common? Like the fact that you could access a pen on your fingertip and a laser pointer. These seem like things that might actually be useful. Like I might actually want to do something like that.
For sure. So the video here, it's imagine you kind of flick the tip of your finger off to reveal a little Sharpie marker that you can draw with. A lot of people had like weird reactions to this too, being like, "Oh my god, it's like you're degloving your hand. This is ridiculous." I was just like, "Really?" Like, to me, it just seemed like I don't know, you have like robot hands, and you just kind of like flip this like little Inspector Gadget finger to reveal Sharpie. How this actually came about was at work. We were prototyping a VR collaboration tool, and we're like, oh, well, we should have hand tracking for the communication social aspect. Then it becomes awkward to pick up that marker and draw. So I was just like, oh, wow, actually, what if you could just stay in your hand tracking mode and just flick this open to reveal a little marker? And maybe you have a black marker on your index finger, and then you have a red one on your middle finger, and you have different colors. So you could just be like, oh, let me just go purple here and draw this. And then a laser pointer was on the other finger. So you're doing a little presentation, or you want to show someone something, you just like flick it like this. So you go like, huh, and that would flick off, and like this would would close the cap, just like that, and you could just point. It was really fun to play with. And in the video, I kind of joke about having other things like a bubble wand and scissors and lighters and stuff like that, like Inspector Gadget would. But the utility of like the marker and the laser pointer is actually quite cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the machine learning you did, as well as the hand toss thing prototype where you toss your hand across the room. And then there's the third one, which is the hand walking locomotion prototype. I see this as kind of related, but so machine learning, what did you actually do with machine learning and what was that process involved? What did you have to do?
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is a hand, the Oculus VR hand, learning how to walk, almost like Thing in the Addams Family. And that's using Unity's ML agent tool. So that's their machine learning library. So once again, it was, I want to learn about something. What's the simplest thing I can do to kind of learn about that tech? So I was really curious about ML agents, which is this really fascinating thing where you kind of just tell your program, here's like a set of goals, but I'll leave it up to you to figure out how to get there. So the goal in this case was, you have this hand that's rigged with physics joints, and I had a box over here, and I said, your goal is to get to that box. Every pixel forward you get to that box, you get a point, but every pixel backwards, every time you go further away from the box, you lose a point. Naughty hand. So you just say, here are the kind of rules of this game. And then the simulation runs like hundreds of thousands of times, where it just starts like first randomly doing stuff, and then eventually it learns, wait a minute, if I move my fingers like this, then I get closer to that box, I get more points. Yeah, and if I move away, I lose points. And over time it learns how to walk in a, I mean, kind of funny way here, but none of that was like animated manually or anything. That was just a hand learning how to move its joints to walk around, which is just fascinating. And all that was made possible with Unity's machine learning agent. So that took me kind of a week to put together, on off, like not full time during the week. But then in the end, I go, cool. I learned about ML agents. I'm just going to put that in my back pocket, and I could use that for a future project, maybe at work or maybe for a game or whatnot. But this is my prototype of how can I just quickly throw something together to learn more about it.
I'm seeing a couple people here having some good comments. Smashed Reality joking that he wants those hands in real life, stupid finger bones. But Claptrap mentioning maybe if the hands were metallic or robotic, it would lessen the creep factor of some of these things. I think that was Corvid mentioning the loving the laser pointer, and G Dog asking, "What is your favorite prototype that you've done?"
Well, so this would actually be a great time to queue up the hair cutting one. If you could throw that one up.
Here we go.
So what you're seeing here is kind of a mannequin head with physics hair that you could just cut the hair any way you want. This is probably my favorite one to build, but also play, because it was just so much fun to just have this hairy bust that you could just kind of go around and just like chop up, make the weirdest haircuts. And I joked in this tweet that it was, practicing to give my wife a haircut, during lockdown. But what I love about this, so there's a lot of aspects to it. One, the scissors. So how you use them is you imagine little hair cutting scissors with one on your thumb and one on your index finger, but you got haptics because you were actually just pinching in order to cut. And that combined with the sound, the audio of like the little like snipping scissor sound, made it so convincing. A big complaint people have with hand tracking is you don't have haptics. Sure, but in this case, you actually did. You were actually going around cutting this hair, and you're like, holy crap, I'm actually like, it feels like I'm doing it. I'm getting that haptic, the audio sensation, and I'm getting the this really funny experience of being able to cut hair, which I'm terrible at. It was just such a blast.
And how did you route that? Because that's not all those physics aren't possible on a Quest by itself. So explain to me like the route that actually prototype got done.
Right. So first I had the idea of, okay, I want to cut hair. And I had this idea that, yeah, the haptics here could be fun. Then I kind of went, well, how is hair normally done in games? So that was kind of my objective of learning more about hair physics. I was going to create my own hair physics thing, but then I was like, oh, that's going to take a while. So I just looked on the Unity asset store, and I think there was an asset called Hair Studio by, I think, Benoit Dumas. And I downloaded it, I tried it, and I was like, this is really, really cool. The downside was it didn't work on Quest. Which is fine. Like, I think a lot of my experiments, what I'm trying to communicate is not, does this run on mobile hardware? It's the concept of, yeah, what if you could use VR and hand tracking to cut hair, and what could that unlock? So the fact that, like, I do all my development just Oculus Link plugged into my PC inside Unity. If it can run on the Quest, great. If it can't, like, I'm not going to force myself to get it to run, because that would just take a lot of time for a lot of these things. And I mean, that's the audience is probably a bit disappointed by that, because they go like, oh, I want to try this, but actually there's no way that I could package this up for you to try, because if it doesn't run on Quest, well, I can't give you an APK. But also you can't, unfortunately, you can't just like export like a PC executable that has hand tracking. hand tracking with Oculus Link only works within the Unity editor. So then I'd have to send over all like the Unity project files and all that sort of stuff, which is just a jumbled mess in a big project with all my experiments. So it's people get upset that I don't release more of my things, but I guess that a lot of people don't realize like how much work it is to actually like package something up in a form that's usable and fun. And that has like an easy way to restart it and like load it up and like calibrate it and whatnot. Like I do everything. I just calibrate it enough inside Unity so I can film the video, and that's kind of as far as I get.
A couple of these comments here, Aaron asking, interested to know what your approach is to handling when the hand tracking drops out.
Right. So I guess that's like another case where in a lot of these videos, it almost seems like the hand tracking is perfect. Like, wow, how do you get such great hand tracking? And then your mind kind of just fills in the rest, being like, that experience would just have perfect hand tracking. That's not the case. Like when I'm filming a lot of these and I do the hair cutting thing, I might have to do 100 takes to get that video, because sometimes the hand is going like this and it's jittering out, and like hand tracking is still not perfect. And so I just kind of work around that. But that's another example of, if I were to release this, I could see people getting frustrated. Like, I don't know if you have the video of the Jenga, Jenga with the long fingers. So in that prototype, what you'll see is, imagine playing Jenga, but every time you do a move, your fingers get longer. So presumably, as you keep playing, it would become really hard to play it when your fingers are like 2 feet long. People see that video and they just go, yeah, oh, whoa, cool, what if, awesome. They want to play it, but they don't realize that like that experience was actually really janky. Like the hand tracking was finicky, picking up the pieces was awkward and all that sort of stuff. But that's not what I'm trying to show. Like, I'm not trying to say like, hey, hand tracking as it is today could play Jenga. I want people to focus on the concept, to go, oh, wow, like what if you could play Jenga like that? And kind of leave it up to their imagination to fill in the blanks, versus if I released it and they would try it, they might go, oh, this is shit. Like, this doesn't work well. Oh, my hand tracking is jittering all over the place. And then they might just throw out the idea and say, oh, hand tracking is stupid. I don't want that to happen. I want people to kind of keep an open mind of, this is still beta stuff, but this is what could be possible in the future.
So Andrew has a real specific question going back about the... what was that, Heaney? Okay. Oh. We're going to take a break for a few seconds while we get our Stevie the TV back up and running. It's funny, our commenters, we called this Stevie the TV. We're back? Okay. All right, so I think the videos are back up and running. There was a very specific question here from Andrew asking about the haircutting one and whether you checked for collision between the other hand and the scissors. Between your opposite hand and the scissors on the haircutting one.
Okay, got it. So question was, in the haircutting simulator, was I checking for collision between the other hand and the scissors? No. So if you did take the scissors and went on your other hands, nothing would happen. However, the other hand did have collision with the hair strands, so that let you do this kind of cool thing where you could like pick up some of the hair strands, like a hairdresser might do, pick up the hair strands between your fingers and then just start like trimming just the tips. So that was really, really fun, and part of why that experience was my favorite.
Yeah, Alex, you're asking a great question. If you can go back to right before you joined, I think you joined right after he talked about this, but let's repeat it for listeners at home. Alex asking, a lack of haptics keeping me from diving into hand tracking. What are your thoughts on haptic feedback with hand tracking?
Hmm. Um, yeah. So honestly, I don't think hand tracking is kind of ready for prime time for a lot of interactions. For some situations, it's really good. Like the hair cutting one, where it was actually felt like I was using the scissors because I'd have to slam my index and thumb together in order to cut. Like that felt good. But there's not a lot of games where like this is like your interaction. So I think hand tracking, until we have either gloves or a wrist interface to do some sort of haptics, it's going to feel a bit unsatisfying and a little unpolished for a lot of interactions. But the social aspect, what we're doing right here, is honestly, I think, the use case for hand tracking right now. It's being able to talk, it's being able to gesture, to point naturally and feel like I am here. I have hands. I see your hands, and I see you communicating so much through your hands. That's where hand tracking's at. If you're gonna make a
Mm.
game, oh, I'm gonna make like a rhythm shooter with hands. It's just like that's not gonna work. If you're gonna have like a Half-Life Alex type thing where you're pulling on levers and doing puzzles and whatnot, it's finicky. Like it still feels kind of beta like, and I think a lot of users would be frustrated.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of people talking about Leap Motion. Have you played with Leap Motion, and what are your thoughts on it?
I played with Leap Motion way back when. I think when they first came out, and then when they had the Orion update, and it was like fun. But really, it was the Oculus Quest. It just being all in one just made it so much easier. Especially with like the link cable, not having to build to the device every time. Like I just kind of have my headset plugged in with Link. I'm in Unity. I can just mess around with hands without ever exporting to the device. It just makes development so much easier.
So one of my favorite is up next. I want to talk about when you tossed your hand across the room and then had it crawl up the leg of the table. That was, I think, my favorite experiment that I've seen you do. How did that come about? And do you think that's actually a game mechanic we might see?
Yeah, so I hope it's a game mechanic that someone looks at. It's funny, I was posting a lot of these to Reddit on the R gaming subreddit, and it would just get like 100,000 plus upvotes, being like, "Oh my goodness, we need to see this in a game." Unfortunately, I then got like banned from R gaming for self promotion, which sucks. I think I posted like the chainsaw one, and it got like 80,000 upvotes in an hour, and someone was just like, "Oh, like." You're buying bots for sure. No one would like. Why would it? This is so stupid. Why would anyone upvote this? And so then I got a message from mods being like, "Oh, like stop self promoting," which bummed me out in a way because I'm just like, I don't know. I got like 100,000 plus likes on this. Clearly, people enjoy seeing this stuff versus like seeing the same cyberpunk sucks meme, 100 times a day. So I'm just like, oh, whatever. Uh,
It's funny, like even as we're talking about all this stuff, I keep thinking about variations on all these ideas. Like it's so the body of your work is just so inspirational and letting you think about new ideas. And handshakes in VR are terrible, right? I reach forward and try to shake your hand, but there is no haptic feedback. But going back to the pinch gesture, I wonder if we could like interlock our fingers and have some kind of visual uh, notification when we both interlock our fingers. That would kind of feel like a handshake in VR. I don't know.
Oh, it'd be cool if we like almost like we grabbed like what are those like Christmas firecracker things, but we just kind of like both pinch in the same spot and then we like pull and it's like and then you get
Ooh,
this little explosion.
yeah, I'd
Someone
like
do
that.
it. Someone build it. Someone try it out.
All right, let's get to the mana hands. So the energy coming out of the you've got like the hidden you've got like energy liquid inside your hands, and
Mhm.
you flip your finger forward and expel energy out of your fingertips. Hopefully we can pull that one up. The Jenga hand isn't pull up. We can't pull that one up on the stream for some reason. But yeah, here's the mana hands.
Yeah, so probably a lot of people here will remember when Half-Life Alex added the swishing liquid in the bottles, and that kind of went viral within the game dev community too, being like, "Oh my god, how is this made?" And I was curious as well. I was like, "Oh my goodness, how is that liquid shader done?" So once again, it was, here's something I want to achieve. I want to learn more about this tech. What can I do and add my own, unique spin to it, which would be around hand tracking. This idea that you would, inside a wizard game or something, your hand is filled with mana, blue or purple liquid, that's a visual indicator of how much mana you have left. So if you cast a spell, flick your fingers, and a flame, comes out of your hand to light up the room you're in, you can visually see how much mana you have left. So it was really just an exploration. How is this liquid shader done? I just found a tutorial online of how something similar was done, and I just added hand tracking to it, and I was like, cool, now I know.
Let's talk about the posing figure, where you've got a little figure right in front of you on a tabletop, and you can sort of push the figure into different positions and pose it into different movements. This looks pretty usable. How much work was involved in this?
Yeah, so this one's actually I'm cheating a little bit with this one, because I did this experiment back in 2017 before there was hand tracking on the Oculus Quest. So this was right when the Oculus Touch controllers were coming out, and I wanted to experiment with pinch gestures. And I unfortunately didn't send you the video, but initially this was like a marionette puppet simulator where you had like the little stick and all these strings connected to the little Unreal mannequin, and you could just bounce it around, but you could also pinch each string and pull it up and do a little puppet show. But I turned off gravity at one point, and I was like, "Whoa, this is cool! Now I have this puppet that has zero gravity." And then I turned friction up to the max so that when you pushed it, it wouldn't just go flying off in 0G. It would just kind of stay rigid. And then I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is like actually really fun to push and prod and actually pose this little figure." What was really fun about that example is, once I posted it, just a bunch of artists, graphic artists, and animators, and everyone who would kind of want a posing mannequin just started commenting, being like, "This would be so cool. This would be so cool." And it's one of my favorite things about making these prototypes, is reaching a niche that I either wasn't aware of, or that I just kind of wasn't, involved in, and seeing their minds just explode and their heads spin with ideas. This one was the artist community, but I did one video, I don't know if I sent it. It was like a yo-yo simulator where you could just kind of bob a yo-yo up and down with your finger, and suddenly all these yo-yo professionals are commenting on it, being like, "Oh, imagine you had an app where you could freeze time and you could plan a move out and you could replay it." And I'm like, "That's awesome!" Like, and I just love talking to them about, like, yes, like introducing them to the magic of VR and hearing their interpretation of how this tech could be used. The chainsaw one, I had one of the world's best chainsaw artists, Griffin Ramsey, reach out, being like, "Oh my goodness, like I could see it being used with this and this and this and this." So each time I kind of build these prototypes, it's so fun when it reaches a niche that I can learn so much about, and kind of talk to the experts in that field and introduce them to VR.
Yeah, I've got several commenters who are obviously artists in our comments talking about the pose video and how they want that. Smashed Reality saying that they use OVR drop to bring Photoshop into VR all the time, and wanting this as like a reference for things like that. So yeah, I definitely yeah, there's a lot of people from that niche in our comments already seeing the need for some of these things. And let's get to the last few here of some of these experiments that you've shared with us. I want to get to the theremin and the let's see, the pottery hands, if we can pull that one up. Pottery hands had me hysterical when I saw it. Yeah, theremin. Do you, this a musical? So we've got air guitar. There's an air guitar game being developed
Mhm.
where you can put your fingers into the various positions, just like a Guitar Hero type game, but you're just holding the open air. Do you think this is something that would actually should be a full app?
Uh, Probably not. But then again, it's just like, yeah, I could go out and buy a theremin, but I don't know where to start looking for that, nor do I want a theremin in my house. So if I could just play around with one for a few minutes in VR and experience, even half of what it's like to play a real theremin, cool. The theremin demo, what was cool about it was actually all web based. So I wanted to learn more about the current state of WebXR and where all that's at. So this is actually playable today. If you find my tweet talking about it, I do give a link. And so I want to, hand tracking is now possible on the web. Awesome. Let's test it out, see what the fidelity is, and what's a small prototype I could build to test that out. Ended up being the theremin because it's the only instrument that you play without touching it.
Mm-hmm. And people are really excited that you're a guest here today. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm really
Of course.
enjoying this discussion. I think we're probably getting near the end of this. We'll have an open ended discussion here. So if you have any great questions, put them into our comments here. Let's talk about the pottery, the ghost simulator. I mean, I can't not hear Unchained Melody in my head whenever I see this video. I,
So many people
yeah.
were upset that I didn't play Unchained Memory over it, and I get it. I was just kind of worried about licensing. I was just like, well, if this thing does go viral and whatnot, like I'd hate to find out that they're like, take it down because of copyright stuff. So I put like a similar soundtrack on the back of it. Um, yeah, the pottery one was fun. I think it was over the holiday break that I don't know how I came up with it, but I was just like, huh, pottery. And I looked to see, are there any pottery apps? And there are, but they don't use hand tracking. Or if they do, like it's not like a very like one-to-one experience with it. So it was a technical challenge. I wanted to see, could I build this all in a shader versus um, a more traditional way where you just have all these vertices and you're actually just doing collision checks on your hands and like pushing the vertices in. I want to say, hey, can I learn more about shaders in doing something like that? So it actually worked really well, and I have a really fantastic write up of how I built it. But it was just a really fun experience to be able to play around with it. And then, of course, once I wanted to film a video, you always want to add that extra little bit of like pizzazz to it. I kind of see like for all the videos I share, first, like I try to keep it 15 seconds because like people, like their attention spans don't go over that when they're just scrolling through a Twitter feed. So it's like keep it short, keep it to the point, and kind of have something kind of fun to it. So that's where I just added the ghost hands. And it looks like it's multiplayer. The multiplayer to it came later. The ghost hands was actually I recorded myself the hand movement of kind of moving up and down the clay, and then I just record another set of hands doing the same. So in that video, there is not actually Patrick Swayze standing in back of me with a VR headset on, communicating with me from the other world. It is just myself.
Matt is asking, what were your takeaways from the WebXR exploration?
Yeah, really cool that hand tracking works well. I mean, it sucks that it's behind like I think a beta flag right now, so enabling it is a bit of friction. But I could once that flag is then enabled for everyone. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you do have performance things to consider when developing on the web with WebXR, but it's really great. And seeing frameworks like A-Frame still being updated, still keeping with the latest specs, still probably the best and easiest way to get into WebXR is probably playing around with A-Frame. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent for the web, like especially as it relates to even Shopify. When you consider people being able to try out, how does this couch look like in my living room? They don't want to have to download an app to do that. If you had to download an app for every single online retailer's store you went to, like that'd be insane. So having it being on the web, powered by web technologies, don't download any app, just kind of press, oh, view this and see it. That's huge. And once we're all wearing AR headsets or AR glasses or whatnot, the same will apply. I don't want to have to download an app. I just want it to be part of the web. I'm browsing a site. Hey, I can see what this couch looks like. Boop. Let's just fling it over to my living room and see what that looks like. So, huge supporter of all web technologies.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I've been blown away by some of the games that we've seen in WebXR, and it never ceases to amaze me when it's just a URL that gets you to a full virtual reality experience. Let's see. Android is asking, what are your predictions for the future of hand tracking? Will it survive on its own, or will it have to be integrated into a framework of software and hardware to work?
Hmm. Well, like I said before, right now I think as a social component, it's huge. What I would love to honestly see is the ability to use a controller in one hand and like hand tracking in the other, because then you kind of get the best of both worlds. If I'm talking to you like this, I can still gesture a lot and point and do all that with my hands, but then I can actually have the precision of a tool in my other hand, whether it's a clicker, whether it's a hammer or something, something where you actually want buttons and haptics and whatnot, but then also have that social component with the other hand, I think would be huge. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think it is like, don't get me wrong, hand tracking is usable today. Still a bit finicky from a social perspective. It's huge. It's just, yeah, from that interaction, precise movement stuff, it's a bit finicky, but it's still beta. It's going to get better. It's going to keep getting better. And I think hand tracking's here to stay.
Yeah, I guess it's a great question because I do wonder if these headsets can stand on their own with hand tracking. And the hand tracking that
Mm,
we have right now is obviously a tacked on secondary input system to these Quests, where you've got this great grayscale cameras pointed in directions that are meant for controller tracking. Like this whole system is fine tuned to track lighted controllers, and we have yet to kind of see um, a tuned system just for hand tracking, and how great that experience will be. A couple questions here that I think are good. You did try the Vario headset, right?
mhm.
Uh, Explain what that experience was like to you, and how good that experience was, or not. But how was that experience? And also, have you tried any gloves?
Yeah, so the Vario XR1 headset, fantastic pass through headset. It's it's a great headset. However, um, coming from a long time of being kind of spoiled with the Oculus Quest of how easy it is to just like anywhere in my house put it on and just like be in VR. Now I had to like set up my base stations again. I had to set up cables, I had to set up all this stuff. I was just like, oh, we've come a very long way since like the Vive first came out, that I just have this standalone headset I can pop on. So the Vario, it was tough to initially kind of all set up. Once it's working though, it's magical. You have this kind of, the field of view is pretty good, but in the center you have this like very small area that is like super resolution. I would say almost like Retina, and that's mind blowing. Like to be able to look at a model of something and just see it like so crisp in that little area makes me go like, I can't wait till that retina resolution can be all encompassing, like everything I see. The pass through is really cool. It still feels a bit weird, like, oh, like it doesn't feel exactly like um you know seeing with your real eyes in real life, but yeah, really cool headset. I know they have the new version that came out or is coming out, and I'm just so excited to see that type of tech be commoditized and put inside a standalone headsets like the Quest.
Mm. And then gloves. Have you used any gloves of any
Oh, right,
kind?
gloves. No, I haven't used
Mm.
any gloves yet.
Yeah, obviously heard from people like Michael Abrash at Facebook, sort of hinting that when we first get those gloves, or really impressive gloves that push back on your hands in
Hmm.
realistic ways, that's going to be a mind blowing experience on par with the first time you tried VR in the first place. It's going to be that kind of a major step forward.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's a interesting comment from Clap talking about controllers kind of being equivalent to a PC mouse, but maybe hand tracking is similar to touch screens. Um,
Mm.
I wonder if that's. It's funny because we've got a virtual touch screen here in our studio here that I can tap little buttons here on the side of my screen, and I keep mistapping some of the buttons here because they're floating, and they're out of my like sort of main area of interaction here right in front of me. I maybe this is a more general question, but we hear from people all the time talking about how different user interfaces are in VR, and it's kind of going full circle to some of that stuff you said back at the beginning of the talk, where people have a hard time letting go of what they already know from 2D
Mhm.
screens. And I guess I'm wondering, from all your experimentations, is there any advice you have for people in being able to let go of some preconceptions? And are there any tools that they should bring to their VR development? Like, are there things that they should know, but things they should sort of leave behind?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I'd just say just challenging the status quo of reality. Like, you have hand tracking. Okay, well, does that mean you have to use your hands like you would normally use it? Or if I want to reach the doorknob over there, can I throw my hand and open it and snap it back? And just like play around with that, and don't be I hate to use think outside the box. It's a terrible term, but it's just like just look at your hands tonight. Tonight as an activity, just look at your hands and go like, "Huh, what if these weren't bound by reality? What things could I achieve?" And like, it doesn't matter if it's silly. It doesn't matter if like, oh, no one would use it or no one would get used to that or whatnot. Just how? What if I had a sixth finger? What would that let me do? Right? Like, what if my hands were twice the size as they are right now? Well, what could I do? What would I do differently? How would I live my life differently? And just kind of think like I would just hate it for VR to converge right now, to say everything that we've experimented with so far, we've now converged on standards and its laser pointer menu, or it's how, I don't know, Half-Life Alex does a certain type of interaction or whatnot. It's just like, keep playing, keep trying out new things, and like keep trying out new locomotion techniques. I had that other video of like moving around by
Mm,
finger walking. So it's like, how would you move forward? You just kind of jiggle your fingers back and forth, like the character does in the movie Her, is kind of like little finger movement. But it's just like, yeah, play around with it. Maybe it sucks, sure, but you'll only know that if you try it in VR. One thing I learned early on was, if you think of an idea that you think of an idea and you might say, ah, it's gonna be stupid. You cannot say that for sure unless you've tried it in VR. Because once you're in VR, then you realize, oh, actually, it's not that bad. This idea that I thought was dumb is actually kind of intuitive and fun to use. Or this idea that I thought was great sucks and I hate it in VR. The only way you'll know is to actually try it out. And so please try it out.
yeah, I love that. That's a great note to end on. And there's people commenting. There's, of course, Ultraleap you can check out. And then the index controllers do support hand tracking on, all five fingers are recognized with some caveats there. With obviously a gripped object. So there's people out there that want
Mhm.
non-Facebook options for some of their tools, and so those options are out there.
For sure.
And I love that we kind of ended with the hand walking one, because that is one of my favorite demos, where I'm kind of cheating here a little bit and holding my hands a little bit further apart so that they don't block each other. But that's kind of one of the examples here where when your two hands block each other, the current generation technology kind of falls apart. And in your demo, that wouldn't work on current generation headsets. But 2 years down the line, when these headsets are tuned for hand tracking, that type of locomotion system might actually work really, really well. So it's not just unbounding your own mind, but you do have to unbound yourself a little bit from the current hardware limitations of what these
Mhm.
headsets can do today, assuming what they're going to be able to do in a couple of years.
100%.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've had Pushmatrix in our studio going through his amazing hand tracking prototypes and a few of the nightmares. We understand the people that are getting squeamish out there with some of these crazy ones. But these are amazing demos. You can follow him on Twitter at Pushmatrix to see all the next prototypes you come out with. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the future.
Should we do our new high five?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll see you.